All right, everybody. So we are looking at middle of next week right now for the potential for a multi-day severe weather event, and that's being a little bit. There's a little bit of hyperbole thrown in there because at this time we really don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if it's going to be multi-day or if it's going to inject fast. We don't know if it's and have one day or no days. We don't know if we're going to have good moisture, anything like that. But I wanted to bring you into a little bit of discussion on that and at least give you my thoughts on what's going to happen next week. But what's all the hubbub about for going into late next week? In short, it looks like we'll have some sort of a trough ejecting into the plains. Could have multiple days of severe weather, but there's lots of factors to consider here, especially at such long range. Today's Saturday, September 16th, so we're looking in the range of about 6 to 8 to 9 days, somewhere in there, depending on how long this severe weather event is ongoing. So some of those factors are, we don't know if moisture is going to be good. How is the trough going to inject? Is it going to inject as a positive tilt, negative tilt? Is it going to swing through really quick? Is it going to stall out? Um, it's really in a weird time being in September with climatology. What is capping going to look like? And what biases can we expect with global models at this range? But first, I want to do a little bit of a deeper dive into the trough itself and what we're expecting with that. And you can see fairly similar solutions between this being the GFS right here and this being the European model right here. These are 500 millibar heights, isobars, and wind speeds. And you can see at first glance fairly similar kind of looks to it. Closed low at 500 millibar on both of them, ejecting into the planes. At this range, we're not really looking for, I could really dig into it and say this one looks more sheared out or whatnot, but at this range, that doesn't really matter. Both of them are depicting sometime in the Friday afternoon, Friday night time frame, some type of enhanced flow making its way into the central plains. That's going to be Nebraska, Kansas, Texas, Oklahoma. So, looking at the GFS a little bit deeper here, if we go to the forecast loop here, you can see that there are, on the GFS here, you have kind of multiple days of enhanced flow, enhanced southwest flow, Wednesday, Thursday, into Friday, and then the trough finally ejects on Saturday on this ensemble run. And even then, you have enhanced flow across the Midwest going into Sunday. So, there is the GFS has a very slow moving bowling ball trough. And if you look at the EPS, the European ensembles, which at least statistically are a little bit better, but I don't really buy into that a lot, especially at this range. The differences are really that big. You can see this digs down, and instead of having Wednesday, Thursday having broad southwest flow, you have northwest flow. And flow out into the Gulf here. So that makes a big difference on your moisture return, on how many days do you have least cyclogenesis and stuff like that leading up into the system. So there are still some discrepancies leading up into the forecast period as well. And then the European also diverges a lot quicker. That's what happens. That's what we're seeing when we see this get very diffuse. Like it is here, is that you're having diverging ensembles and very quickly diverging ensemble members here. But that being said, you still do have multiple days of enhanced flow across the plains. which is a little bit out of season. If you go and let's just dig in a little bit and go into the deterministic runs, they don't mean really that much at this point. But it is always nice to dig into them, see what they are saying, etc., etc. So if we look into deterministic runs here, you can see that if I go back, okay, there we go. Sorry, my computer's having a little bit of stuttering here. You can see looking back onto Wednesday, early Thursday, we're having strong northwest flow across the southern plains, southern Oklahoma, and most of Texas, and kind of this diffluent jet stream split here, with a cutoff up here and a cutoff down here, or a closed trough up here and a cutoff low down here into Southern California. And just rolling that forward, you can see those kind of come together. The southern one kind of gets absorbed and eaten by this northern one as it stalls and cuts off, and you get this this kind of zonal to northwesterly flow across the plains, with southwesterly flow kind of stuck behind the Rockies, at least for the first part, going into Thursday and into Friday. But that does get a little bit better. Friday evening, you have a little bit of a better trough ejection across the central northern plains here. Still zonal to northwesterly flow across the southern plains. But like we've said, is that this is deterministic, not ensemble, and this is not exactly how this is going to go down. But in general, it kind of is this is depicting at this moment a little bit of a messy ejection and kind of zonal to northwesterly flow across much of the southern plains, and then a tightly wound close low over the northern plains. And this solution would still present some sort of severe weather. Particularly, what catches my attention is Friday night. So with this solution, which is not what's going to happen, Friday night would probably be the most favored for a clean ejection. Now, if we go into the GFS, this is the 12Z GFS, and we go back, same situation, closed low across and approaching Southern California, closed low over the Pacific Northwest. But you can see in this one, this closed low to the south is a little bit more progressive, further inland in this case. But same, it gets absorbed by this closed low. They become one and the same. And on this one, you have that ridging builds a little bit further east to the south, and you have, instead of that northwesterly flow, you have due zonal to southwest flow across the plains in this case, even as this low is all the way back in northern Nevada. And going forward, you have a much cleaner trough ejection right here into the northern plains. You have more zonal flow across the southern plains here instead of northwest. It still does lean northwest with time over the southern plains, and this low kind of broadens out and pulls back over Montana, and you have due southerly flow over the northern plains here. But both solutions bring in some chance of severe weather with them. On the Euro, it's on Friday. On the GFS, it is also on Friday. But we're seeing here the GFS compared to last runs. If we go to our 156, if we want to do model trend, you can see that this has gotten a little bit It's been a little bit all over the place, but in general, this has gotten slower, slower and slower and slower, especially compared to earlier runs like here or here. And this will probably be all over the place going forward until we get at least until the 3-4 day range. Closed lows, there's usually, or a lot of times, there's not a lot of skill involved with them. And we're also approaching, I wanted to mention this, I was hoping to get something from Twitter, but I haven't been able to find anything yet. But seasonably, we're going into transition season, where we have a lot of variability in jet extensions and how deep your trough's going to be digging. There's a lot of variability of that in this season right now. So right now we're in a particularly turbulent time where models are not going to be particularly accurate until you get into the short range. I wanted to take a look at moisture for a second here. Just wanted to go in and with moisture and just look at mean dew point means and you can see that there's large plumes of 60-degree dew points in both the American ensembles, the GEFS ensembles, and in the European ensembles. Both are a little bit diffuse as you get further north, as you would expect for this time of year. But both do show adequate moisture. And with the Gulf of Mexico being as warm as it is, the entire Gulf of Mexico sitting at about 3 degrees above average, I believe, or something like that, you would expect that to be true. But if you go down into MSLP, into your averaged MSLP for both, unlike over the winter, where we had lots of severe weather, and in the early spring, where we had a Florida high sitting over there, and a Florida high sitting there and funneling moisture to the north. We don't really have that in this case. Both solutions kind of show northeasterly winds with a strong high that is over Maine in both solutions. So that does, there are some questions that I have about moisture, but in general, I think that it's a pretty good bet that we will have good moisture with the Gulf of Mexico being such a boiling pot of water down there. I don't have too many worries about it. And then I wanted to talk about Climo a little bit. We are well out of normal climatological probabilities for severe weather, approaching the yearly minimum, which is somewhere in the range of, I think it's late October. Mid-October, I think, is the climatological min. So we're fairly close to Climo min for both tornadoes and general severe weather. So that kind of puts some doubts in my mind as well, just being at climatological min. But there is consistency in models showing that there is going to be a trough ejecting. So we should be able to overcome those bad minimums, or being kind of out of season here for severe weather. And I also wanted to look at this and look at where we were this spring as far as drought versus where we are now. And the reason I want to look at that is because of the EML source region. So because we've seen a slower and slower ejection of the trough on both the EPS and the GFS, I have some doubts in my mind about the EML being a little bit too strong, especially. I think that might be one of the issues with us being, kind of still in the late summer instead of being in the fall, I think we are fall right now, I believe, but we're still in that transition time. We still have plenty of very hot temperatures across the U.S. Right now. And one thing that was going for us this spring is that our EML source region, which is over here in New Mexico, Southwest Texas, into Colorado, and most of the Rockies and desert Southwest, was basically free of drought for the most part. And that meant that your EML was not too strong. This was taken, this is the drought monitor from June 13th. And if we go to now, you can see that our drought has built in extremely heavily over Texas, which East Texas is not our EML source region, so that's not a problem for us. But Southwest Texas, New Mexico, Eastern Arizona, and Southern Colorado being our EML source region could be a problem that we have a stronger than depicted EML coming off of this region and into our target area. So that's the other reason that I am leaning toward, we may end up with our severe weather days a little bit limited because we have a stronger EML. So if you don't really have that solid trough ejection, we may struggle to get rid of that cap to a certain extent. But I also know of events that have managed to do incredible things despite a strong EML. So I don't think this will kill our chances overall. So in short, I think that there is a fair chance of at least 2 to 3 days of enhanced severe weather probabilities across the plains. But as far as where, the exact timing of it, and to what degree is currently unknown and won't be known until about 3 days out at most. But anyways, thank you very much for watching. Just wanted to do a quick brief on next week's potential for severe weather. And beyond that, thank you very much for watching.